Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spectrum Sessions, the podcast where we platform unfiltered autistic voices and celebrate our differences. I'm Heather from the National Autistic Society Scotland, and today we're here with Judith Langlands-Scott. Judith, it's so great to have you here today. Could you please introduce yourself to anyone who doesn't know who you are?
Well, yes. First of all, hello. It's great to see you too. Again, Heather. So,
Yeah,
well, I'm Judith. I'm Judith Langlands-Scott, and I guess I would describe myself as a historian and a writer.
could you tell us about one of your current special interests or hyperfixations?
Well, you know this already, Heather. My
Yes.
hyperfixation is the Scottish witch trials, but more locally, the Forfar witch trials, because that's where I live. And I also have to really restrain myself from doing this. It's family history research. So I've traced all sides of my family, all however many branches, back to some of them are the 1400s. But I get obsessed and I stay
Yeah.
awake and I can't go to bed. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, is that like your main or only special interest, or do you have a few? Because I know that a lot of autistic people, some have one and some have several.
Um, I don't know if it's a specialist interest, but it's tidying cupboards. I can't stand so we're in my study today, which is the only messy room in my house because I can't stand clutter.
Mhm.
But weirdly, I need it in here. So I don't know if it's a specialist interest or an obsession, but everything has to be tidy in my cupboards, or I can't cope.
You were diagnosed later in life. Could you tell us a bit about your diagnosis journey and how it felt to finally discover that you were autistic?
Yes, well, let me think. I was diagnosed at the age of 48, and I'm 54 now. And then my friend, one of my best friends, there was an interview with Laura James. I don't know if you've ever read her book, Odd Girl Out.
I've not, but I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, so my one of my best friends who's known me since I was a kid, he messaged me. I was going to say phoned me, but no, everyone who knows me knows I never answer my phone. I don't talk on the phone. Anyway, he messaged me and he said, "Put on BBC Breakfast. You're on TV right now." And I thought, what's he talking about? But I did what he said. And it was Laura James being interviewed about the book. And I listened to her and I thought, oh my God, this is me. So I went and bought the book immediately, read it. And it's difficult for me to read books like this. I don't know if it's just because I'm late diagnosed autistic, but it stirs up lots of emotions. A lot of them can be negative or so anyway, I read the book and in one go and just thought, right, maybe I need to look into a diagnosis. um I mean, I always knew I was weird.
Mhm.
There was a meme popped up on the internet yesterday, and one of my friends sent me it, and it said late diagnosed autistic women. We didn't have these back in the 90s. We were just weird.
Yeah.
And that's true. So I always knew it was a bit weird, and but when yeah, I then went and looked into the diagnosis process, and it was a brilliant team in Dundee who, sadly, like so many of these teams nowadays, are no longer in existence. Um, and it was an NHS diagnosis. It was quite a prolonged process, and at the end of it, when I was told the results after several weeks, I remember saying to Susan, who assessed me, when she said, "Judith, I'm happy to tell you that you're very definitely autistic." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Oh, of course." But even then, I was surprised, because
Hmm.
yeah, I guess it was the first time I felt recognized. So yeah, and it changed my life.
Um,
I don't know if you want to talk me to talk to you about that a little bit, but
yeah,
it,
love
that
to.
that day was incredible. So because I have mobility issues, there's a doctor's surgery right across the road from my house. So they came there they booked a room there to sort of do the assessments, and it was this beautiful sunny spring day, not cloud in the sky. And I came out from, getting the results, and I was sitting in my wheelchair, and I just looked up at the sky, and I felt like this amazing sense of freedom, that there's nothing wrong with me. I am exactly the way I'm meant to be. And it was quite incredible. But it took a long time to get there. I'm one of the lucky ones because, you know, y- as you know, and a lot of people will know out there, these services are all being cut all over the country now. So I was very lucky to be able to use that service.
Yeah. Yeah, the waiting lists are very long at the moment, and
Oh, it's insane, and so
services
many
getting
of
cut
them.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that the way you felt where you were like the way you put it about how you felt there was nothing wrong with me and you realize that in the diagnosis, that's the main thing. That's the main thing that people experience when they're late diagnosed a lot of the time. I know that when I was late diagnosed, it was like it puts everything into perspective. And it's like
Yes,
you just realize because throughout your childhood, and I guess for you even a lot of your adulthood as well, you would have thought um, "Oh, all of these things, like, why am I struggling so much?" You would attribute it to yourself, and you would blame yourself for that.
it
Whereas this gives you
affects,
something
yeah.
external, and you realize, "Oh, it's not my fault, it's because I'm autistic."
Yes, yes. And I think being almost made to grow up feeling like there is something wrong with you. Why can't I join in at the party when everyone else is joining in as a kid, and being forced to go on, play the game, and get involved. Everyone else is doing it. Being made to just do things that I found incredibly uncomfortable and difficult uh, on a social level. It makes you grow up thinking that um, there's something really wrong with me, and it affects your self-esteem massively. I think, and it's very strange because my youngest child has just been diagnosed, and he doesn't want to be autistic. So his diagnosis at the age of 11 has made him feel that there is something wrong with him.
Mm,
Whereas my diagnosis made me realize there isn't anything wrong with me. I'm just different.
yeah.
And it's the way I was programmed.
Yeah, it's interesting how the perspective can change for, young people might get diagnosed and then feel, "Oh, they wish they weren't autistic," and all this, but when you've dealt with being autistic your whole life and not understanding what it was that was different about you, having that answer,
Yes.
is such a great thing to have. But,
It was huge. And I mean, so many of my immediate relatives are autistic. It was going through the diagnosis process, learning that my gran was very obviously autistic. I mean, she used to go and stay in a caravan up at Loch Rannoch in the middle of nowhere for 8 months of the year. And this was even when she was like in her 80s.
Mhm,
And but my gran, without knowing it, her dad had obviously taught her. So my gran had taught me things that I guess a lot of other children never get. My gran would sit my brother and I down and say, "Now, children, I'm going to teach you how to have a conversation." And she did all these things. She was amazing. So, but it's like all my masking skills, all that you see when you look at me and hear me, people who've known my gran, who's sadly no longer with me now, just come up and they'll look at me and they'll go, "Oh my God, it's Jean," because I am. I got them all from her.
you were also diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which has been found to be linked to autism. Can you tell us a bit about what your day-to-day life is like as an autistic person with hEDS?
Well, first of all, again, the diagnosis process was prolonged. I think on
Mhm,
average it takes about 20 years to be diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. But luckily, perhaps in our family, my youngest child, it was picked up in him when he was very young, when he was a baby. So my two elder children and I went to the geneticist as well. And while there's no blood test for it, there's lots of other tests they can do. So I was misdiagnosed with fibromyalgia when I was much younger. So I was always told to you're not actually damaging yourself. The pain's not caused by damage. It's so just keep doing whatever you're doing, and keep active, and which is exactly the wrong sort of advice if you have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So as a result, I have damaged so many of the joints in my body, and walking for me is not really possible. Standing, lots of things. So what's my life like on a day-to-day basis? Well, I suffer massively from chronic fatigue syndrome because that's part of the illness. I Pain is a massive issue, and I hate talking about this because I have to I have learned and have to deploy so many psychological strategies throughout the day so that I'm not concentrating on the pain. But there's some days that I can't avoid it. There's some days that I'm just in bed. I can't get up. There's no way. Um, I have to try to what's the pace myself. See, I can't even remember the word. I have to try to pace myself, which is very difficult. Because I don't know. I could say to myself, right, if I did something on Monday, take a rest all day Tuesday, maybe do a little bit of something on Wednesday. But I can't say that I'm going to be feeling well on Wednesday in reality.
Mhm.
So it's difficult to pace myself, but I have to try. Again, it's a huge battle with self-esteem and not, negative self-talk, not telling myself I'm useless and I'm rubbish, um, and that has affected the Ehlers-Danlos and the autism. There are times where I have been suicidal. So just because it's difficult to live like this.
Mhm.
So that's the depressing part, Heather.
Yeah.
That's the bit I try never to tell anyone, and I'm telling all of you now. Yeah,
That's
so
It's good that you're sharing it, and it's good for listeners to hear this sort of thing so that they know that they're not alone if they're experiencing these things. So
yeah, because I know that when I appear on thing, if I'm on a podcast or giving a talk or something like that, then I appear to be this, ebullient, very confident, person. But that's not actually who I am at all. And so I wouldn't like someone to think, oh yeah, well she's got that and she's got that and I've got that, but look at she can do this. Um, what I do has a huge toll. It takes a huge toll on me,
yeah,
physically and from an autistic point of view. Uh, because after this, we'll talk for maybe about an hour. I'll have to go lie down now, and I'll shut down for maybe 3 hours, 4 hours.
yeah,
So I'm sure you understand that.
hmm yeah. When I'm
It's
filming a podcast, it's like the only thing I can do that day really for work, and then I'm just completely exhausted because it's so much,
yes,
socializing.
absolutely. But that's why the autism diagnosis is so important because it makes you realize that this is part of being autistic and the cost that social interaction has on us. And so, as long as we realize that, again, we're not turning it back on ourselves and thinking, well, someone else can talk to people for an hour or be out and have a meal with people for an hour or two, and they don't have to go and lie in their bed for the rest of the day. And you think, yeah, but that's because they're not overstimulated by the environment. They're not overstimulated by this sort of possible eye contact that's going on, or
Hmm
just having to get dressed. So
Yes.
yeah, so don't be fooled by the fact that if you have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos and you suffer massively because it's caused early onset arthritis with me and discs crumbling in my back and you name it, don't be fooled into thinking that, that woman's got it, but look, woohoo, she's going around like that. And, she's not most of the time.
Mm. Yeah. When I'm looking at our social media profiles, I don't want to be, just spreading the message that awesome, autistic people, everything's great and this is all the great things about being autistic. And
Yes.
only focusing on all of these great things because yes, it's very important to have that narrative of all the great things about being autistic and how it's totally okay to be autistic. But it's also important to share the difficult stuff,
Well,
and share all the
yes.
sides of it. But it's maybe it doesn't come across as well on social media to share those things, but it is so important.
Yes, because social media is always up and showing a lot of times, a false view of what someone's life is actually really like. But a huge part, since the autism diagnosis and with the Ehlers-Danlos, um, I get counselling from a psychologist. I have to pay for that because NHS, non-existent,
Mhm.
but I have to have regular therapy in order to stay mentally healthy. And a thing that's come out of therapy and the autism diagnosis, one amazing thing that I learned, and again, it's talking about suicide, but it's the difference between suicidal ideation and actually being suicidal. So
Mhm.
I can not be able to find my keys and I have to go out immediately and then have a complete meltdown and think, well, that's it. I'm just going to kill myself. This is ridiculous. My life
Mhm.
is over. I can now realize and talk myself down and go, Judith, really, you've only misplaced your keys. You'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah.
You're still going to get out. Whereas I wouldn't have known that in the past and might have gone to bed and stayed there all day. And
Mm.
yeah, so therapy is essential, I think.
Yes. I mean, thank you for sharing all of that. I'm sure that's very valuable for listeners to hear. How has being autistic and having hEDS changed your perspective on life?
That's a very good question. How has it changed my diagnosis again is the key, making me realize that I'm okay. And actually, considering that I am autistic and have gone undiagnosed all these years, and that I do have this uh, condition that really limits what I can do in life, I am still valuable.
Mhm.
I'm still valuable. I can still contribute something to society, even if it's just to be a nice person and
Yeah.
smile at someone in a day. I do have a value because Scotland is inherently a Calvinist society. We still are. It's in our very bones and the roots of our society. People are still valued upon what they do to earn money,
Mhm.
what they do for a living. I mean, one of the first things someone will probably ask if they're a stranger and you're meeting them in a room full of people is, "Oh, what do you do?" And so, in terms of money, I don't earn a lot of money. Um, I am disabled, so I have worked a lot in the past and physically broken myself. Um, but my value is separate to what I can contribute monetarily to society. So I it's learning and understanding that as an autistic person and as a disabled person, my value lies within me and not out with me in society. And it takes I think a long time to reach that understanding.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, it does. I mean, that's a great way to say how your perspective on life has changed. And yeah, I think it's an important thing for people. who are disabled or who are autistic to understand is that, it doesn't decrease their value if they can't work and things like this, you know?
Yes, yes. And my eldest children who had problems, especially in secondary school, and their attendance was down to like 25% in fourth, fifth, and sixth year. But I homeschooled them, and but whenever they were at family gatherings and stuff, once you each reach about 15, which is crazy in our society, people will say, "Oh, what do you want to do when you're older?" And I taught them both to say, "What do you want to be when you're older?" was what they would get asked, and I taught them to say, "Happy."
Oh.
I said I said because one, that is not an answer they're expecting, so it confuses them enough so that you can get away and move on to something else. But also, nobody can argue with that. Nobody can say,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, you can't be that," or "That's a ridiculous thing to think of being." Of course, it's what they should think of being. So, yes.
That's lovely. How has being autistic and having hEDS impacted your choice in career? Um,
Uh,
does it limit you to having to work from home or working shorter hours? And have you previously found that you've been able to get reasonable adjustments from employers?
I was doing a PhD years ago that I didn't complete because of finances,
Mhm.
and I had another surprise baby. Uh, but what I was doing while I was doing my PhD, I was working in Iceland, the
Cool.
frozen food place, and it's really surprising, amazing company to work for, just
Mhm.
amazing. Every company should be like them. So my friends did laugh initially when I told them that I had a job in Iceland because I have always wanted to go to Iceland, so they all knew that. And I wanted to study the Icelandic sagas and look at the difference between the Anglo-Saxon sagas and the Icelandic sagas. Always wanted to do that. And so, so when I first told them I got a job in Iceland, they were all like, "Oh, when are you moving? Oh my God, this is amazing!" I said, "No, no, in the high street in Forfar." And when I started working for them, well, I've always been this sort of person who has to go full speed at everything, and I'm a perfectionist. Uh, and that can put you off doing a lot of things, being a perfectionist. But it also means that you can burn out very quickly. So I was in there and I was full speed doing everything, and I was cleaning, but I was also on the tills and I was speaking to customers, and obviously that just exhausts you. Um, Even though most of them were lovely to speak to. But Iceland were very good. My manager was amazing. So um, when it came to sort of psychologically needing a break, I need a bit of quiet for 5 minutes or whatever. That was never a problem. When it came to the physical issues, of I couldn't. I mean, my ligaments were all damaged, and I had to get um, an a ligament replacement in one of my ankles, which is just what happens. Is the collagen's affected all throughout the body, so you have faulty ligaments and things. And I'll often snap them, and I have no idea that they've snapped, even
Yeah.
though someone else will be, you know, dying with pain. So they were very good. They were very good with adjustments. They really were. And
Good.
then when I was in a wheelchair, they had said, "Look, this is no problem because I always got the highest number of bonus cards and stuff like that through the tills." So I was a good employee. I know I was. I got awards and things.
Hmm.
So they were like, "Look, you can move your wheelchair in and you can sit at the tills and you've still got a job." And they were fantastic. But by that point, I had to take months off work to get the ligament repair, and then there were all sorts of other things done. And then the early onset arthritis took over, so um, it became impossible to work, just
Mhm.
impossible. And because I've actually got it affects it affects your joints everywhere throughout your body. So now for a few years I've had slipped discs in my jaws.
Oh.
So the discs have slipped forward on both jaws, and I need surgery to repair that. So it means that if I talk a lot, obviously my jaw gets really sore. I'm
Mhm.
limited to what I can eat because my jaw gets really sore. But when it comes to trying to go to sleep at night, because you lie on your side, obviously your jaw gets pushed to either side.
Yeah.
So sleep is a huge issue for me.
Hmm.
So please, everyone, don't cry. Honestly, I'm fine, but yeah. So it just became impossible.
Yeah.
So I work away at home on my research and my book, um, and I'm doing that just now for I'd say the next year. Um, and I give podcasts when I'm asked to give podcasts, and I've done a little bit of TV, as you know.
Mhm.
I've done lots of. This is now you're going to ask me about the book later, so I'll maybe leave that. We can expand on that later. But
Mhm.
do a lot of talks in the community, historical talks in the community,
Yeah.
uh, and that's all. I have a research partner. We do that together. He's also autistic, so that's brilliant, and we fit all these things round when we are able and we feel well enough. So
That's
yeah,
great. Well, I'm glad that Iceland were able to give you those adjustments when you were working face to face. That's really good.
yes, huge shout out to Iceland.
Yes.
Absolutely love, and the shop's no longer there now. That's not Iceland's fault.
Mm.
Someone outbid them on the rent, but uh, I know, great company, great company.
History has been one of your special interests since you were a child. What initially made you so interested in history, and why do you think it's lasted so long into adulthood?
Well, I'm sorry to go back to being ill again,
It's okay.
but because I've had this illness or this condition since I was born, the hEDS, I spent a lot of time off school when I was young. It makes you susceptible to childhood, any diseases basically. If you have a cold, please don't come near me ever because I'll have it within 24 hours. It's just the way it works. The whole family are like that. So it meant that I was off school all the time and being really ill. And when I was in my teenage years, I got glandular fever. Um, and I, we had, my dad always had loads of books at home, history books, art, uh, literature. And so I just read the books. And I remember when I was really young, and I need to go on eBay and buy this because have been following it for a while. My dad had these encyclopedias, and there was one in particular that I just used to read all the time, and it was about the philosophers, the Greek sort of most famous Greek philosophers, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, um, and then also about history, the Greeks, the Romans, uh, just so I just read all the time. And
Yeah.
then my favourite book when I was younger was from about 14 was Pride and Prejudice.
Hmm.
And my dad also bought me this poetry book called A Ring of Words, and it was it was Keats and Byron and Yeats and um, so anyway, Pride and Prejudice was my favourite novel, and I was reading poetry at an age that I shouldn't have been reading and understanding poetry, but I did, got it. So I became obsessed. Obviously, you're thinking about Keats. Well, you get interested in the Romantic poets and that era of history, and I'm also thinking about um, Jane Austen and that era of history. And then I'd read a book about from Michael Wood, this historian that I love, and I'd be interested in that. And then he came on TV. Michael Wood had this series on TV during the day,
Mhm.
and so I'd be lying on the couch and I would watch it, obsessively. So, but I was also as a child, my dad took me everywhere. National Trust places, historic Scotland places, and I was always able to somehow imagine myself back in that era, as I was going through it. Um, and also when I stayed, I mentioned my gran used to go and stay up at Kinlochranach, and so she took my brother and I with her every weekend between March and October, and then the summer holidays, Easter holidays, October holidays. Well, everywhere around Kinlochranach are clan graveyards and um, clan sites, McDonald's cave and all this, and right next to where we stayed, the river was called, or the bay was called Altdrui, so it's all about the druids and stuff.
Hmm.
So it just was everywhere, and when I was up there, although I was with my brother, we went off and played completely independently in the wilderness of this. We had a boundary we had to stay within, but so your imagination just takes hold, and I needed to know who'd been there before me. I don't know if it was in some kind of effort to understand humanity, you
Mm.
know, the society that I lived in, because I didn't understand how people operated. And I don't know if it was that, just curiosity about how people think and behave and how society has worked, how it's changed, how it's maybe not changed at all.
Hmm.
So so that's where I'm not, you can tell I'm not obsessed at all with history, can't you? Yeah, that's where it came from, and it's never left me.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting if you went to history because you felt like you wanted to understand the world around you and you weren't understanding people. That's why I turned to psychology and I wanted to study psychology because I was like, what
Ah,
are people? Why don't I understand these social conversations? I want to understand, so I went and studied psychology at university.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
interesting how you turned to history and I've turned to that, but both
yeah.
was.
History and philosophy. I was massively. I did philosophy until halfway through. Yeah, halfway through third year at
Mm,
university. So, and I think that was because I wanted to understand the sort of why and how and what questions.
mm.
Um. So yes.
Cool. And with you speaking about Jane Austen, I was just curious. I just finished the Jane Austen at Home book, by Lucy
Oh.
Worsley, like a couple months ago. Have you read it
No,
by
no, no.
chance?
That's on my list. I'm having to be. Oh man, I'm surrounded by books here. It's ridiculous. And the only things I ever want for birthdays and Christmases are books.
Yes.
So I have a list, and people can buy me them if they want to. But even two off that list would be amazing. So I have a reading pile for fun,
Hmm.
and then I have a reading pile for what I'm doing at the moment. And at the moment, I have to be. I've got to be disciplined. Although I'm sitting here looking, Richard Holloway's Waiting for the Last Bus is sitting right in front of me, and I have to not touch that. I have to stay away from that because I don't have time to read that at the moment.
Mm.
So no, that's another one I would love to read. I think all Lucy Worsley's books are amazing, and
Yeah.
her TV programs are fantastic. So
Yeah, I'd recommend it. It was really, really interesting.
yeah, I would like to. And I've watched her program when she's at Jane Austen's house
Hmm.
um, several times. Jane Austen's just this. I think, how many people can we claim to be autistic in hindsight? But the way that she sat back and watched people
Yeah.
and could observe and could tell by watching two people that there were signs going on. What were these signs? These non-verbal signs, and just the way she describes that in her books, amazing.
Yeah. You have a particular interest in the Scottish witch hunts, and we've previously talked about how autistic women back then would likely have been accused of being witches just because they were different. It's a really fascinating topic. Could you talk a bit more about
Don't get me started. I warn you.
it?
Uh, oh wow. Yes, the Scottish witch hunts are just the most. It's just the most fascinating and utterly devastating period, to show man's inhumanity to man. But then it's actually also very complex because you realize that it isn't a simple case of people just going along with the crowd and staying silent and not speaking up for the people that were accused. You realize there's something much deeper going on within society, and it's a case of, well, James the First and Sixth basically said that if you don't agree when a witch is accused, then that means you're working with them, which is, So you were you couldn't speak up and say, "Excuse me, please, she's not a witch. She's just a really nice old person." Or, "Okay, that's a young lass there, and she's maybe just a bit, not like the other girls and a bit of an outsider. There's nothing wrong with them." You can do that because then you would
Mhm.
get accused. But the reason I became so interested in it, oh, I have a huge sense of injustice, and I know that runs through a lot of autistic people's bones. You can't stand injustice, and but also I really identified with these people.
Mhm.
I identified with the fact that a lot of them were just outsiders. I identified with the fact that probably I'm going to end up like that old woman over there who's disabled and who's a bit cantankerous and is annoyed with the world. Um, I could identify with the notion of them being unwanted,
Mhm.
valued as valueless,
Yeah.
actually valued as having a cost on society, because the poor law, the benefit system of the day, the poor law wasn't around then at that point, sorry, but the the fees that were paid to the church for the poor, they were the equivalent of the benefit system that we have now.
Mhm.
So the the people were seen as not only having no value to society, but actually costing society money. And let's just get rid of them, or
Mhm.
let's just cut this money off, and they'll have to fend for themselves. And realizing, the more I read, that the more, I can't say that's grammatically incorrect, the more I read that society has not changed. And
Mhm.
if we like to kid ourselves that we're much more civilized than these people were in the 1700s, no, we're not. We're exactly the same. And we will look on our neighbor and point, and, you know, it's really hit me through the COVID epidemic how many people were willing to phone up the authorities and tell on their wee granny next door who'd had a birthday party in her back garden with her grandchildren. It's um, the way our society works, the way people behave hasn't changed, but the laws have. Thank
Mhm.
God. And we need to protect these laws because they're not guaranteed. They can be taken away at any point.
Yeah.
So it became hugely important. And like I say, my research partner is also um, autistic. And so we explain at the beginning of all the talks that we do in the community, to educate our community on the for witch hunts, which incidentally the community are amazingly supportive of and really interested in. And
Mhm.
our talks are always sold out. We don't sell them for money. It's just that you have to get a ticket if to come. So our talks are always sold out immediately. Um, but we always talk at the beginning of our talks about why this is important to us. We always declare that we are autistic people and that um, we face a lot of the sort of tribulations that these people faced, or a lot of the there's a lot of stigma attached still to being autistic.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to get political, but I'll just mention America. Especially what's going on there now, and this idea that there's an we're an epidemic.
Mm.
Well, that's what James I said about the witches. There's more and more of them. It's becoming an epidemic.
Yeah.
Well, these words are applied to autistic people being diagnosed nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, these people are receiving benefits from the church. They're costing the local community, the country money. Well, these people might be receiving benefits. They're costing the country money, and the country can't afford it if more and more of them get diagnosed. So let's remove the diagnosis process. That might cure it overnight. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I'll stop now.
No, it makes sense. It's very interesting, that similarity that there is between autistic people now and then witches back then.
Yes,
So it's great to learn about it from you.
and I mean they weren't just some of them. A percentage of them you can identify probably were autistic,
Yeah.
but most of them were disabled.
Yeah.
Most of them were disabled. The older ones had mental health conditions or dementia. Some were, in the case of Forfar, were just nonconformists. They
Mhm.
didn't want to. They didn't want to abide by the society's laws.
Yeah.
So, and alcoholism, and I guess there's. We know that some of them would have been taking magic mushrooms by
Mhm.
a lot of the sort of evidence. So, drugs and alcohol back then were a huge issue as well.
Hmm. It's
So
very
yeah.
interesting. You appeared on a TV series with Lucy Worsley on the BBC iPlayer called Lucy Worsley Investigates, where you talked to Lucy about the witch hunts. What was that experience like for you of being on TV?
Do you know, it's something I have never sought in my
Mhm.
life, but I always made a joke about it with my son and daughter-in-law who lived with us at the time, and my kids growing up. They all knew I just love Lucy Worsley. I love her
Mhm.
programs on TV. And I used to joke, I used to say, one day she'll be here having a cup of tea with old Jude. And I got an email from the BBC, and they decided they were going to come out to my house and film at my house because it was still sort of COVID restrictions. But because I have big French doors, and there was room for the film crew to sort of poke the camera through the doors with the doors
Yeah.
wide open, and room for Lucy to sit 2 meters away from me at my big long table. We filmed here, and that was just I think I can't say it's the best fun I've ever had, because that wouldn't be fair on my husband and my children. But it was the best fun I've ever had. Oh, it was like, can you imagine getting to geek out for the whole day with someone who wants to geek out, and she's just as enthusiastic about geeking out as you.
Yeah.
So we would be talking off camera while they're maybe taking a film of something up, over here, or they're maybe fixing the sound over here. Maybe blah 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 blah, and then we'd have to start filming again.
Yeah.
Damn it! Um, so it was a very strange experience, as in I'd never done anything like that before. I've done some TV since. I recorded with um, Frankie Boyle,
Hmm.
and it's a documentary that didn't go out on Channel 4, and it got it was a six episode documentary series about some monarchs, and the role of monarchy within society.
Mhm.
And the week that it was due out, the Queen died.
Oh,
So they
yeah.
had to email us and say, documentary's out in 2 days. Really sorry, everyone, but it's not going to go out now.
Hmm.
And then they cut it down to an hour-long episode, just focusing really on Queen Elizabeth I. But that was also amazing fun.
Cool.
I filmed, is it Mary King's Close in Edinburgh and at North Berwick, and just amazing. But the thing with Lucy Worsley was, it was so surprising for me, because I I I take a lot of what I see as read. So when you see the way she is on camera, she's not like that off camera. As in,
Hmm.
she is Is she shy? A little bit shy? So like
Hmm.
me, a little bit shy. Uh, and so that made things, I think, almost easier for us. Um, and then I was able to see that actually, no, when she makes the noise with her hands and the camera starts rolling again, she's a bit like I am now, a bit like
Yeah.
this,
Hmm.
more animated. She's a lovely person, absolutely lovely person, and it was just brilliant. And I couldn't believe it because here's this little disabled human who's found it difficult to get through life a lot of the time, and I can't remember which. I think it's Thoreau who says something about just keep traveling in the direction of your dreams. I'm paraphrasing. The quote's much better, and that really gave me this lesson that if you love something and it is your specialist interest, then just keep going down that road because someday something like this will happen to you.
Hmm.
So it was just, it was brilliant. It was, and the film crew were fantastic. Everybody was incredibly lovely. I just, yeah. So it's for something I never expected to do, as in TV. It was just a lovely experience.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Especially just talking about your special interests all day long. That that sounds great.
Yeah, and the episode that I was on, it's like all of the people that I admire were in that episode, and
Hmm.
I kind of know them now, like Professor Julian Greedier and oh, the other name escapes me. Sorry, the other person. I love this woman whose name has just escaped me. But anyway, we were Louise Human, Dr. Louise Human. She's fabulous. Uh, so yeah, they were in the episode too. And
Hmm.
I loved the way that Lucy Worsley treated the subject because she was very moved by it. And the actual we were filming all day, and I think my bit came down to 7.5 minutes. And I knew that would be the case. I was expecting that I would have 2 minutes because that was normal. When I was showing her some of the things I was showing her and some of the first-hand evidence that I was showing her, she just couldn't believe, and she was really moved by.
Yeah.
And you see that at the end of the episode. She's very moved by the whole subject.
As a mother of autistic children, what do you think are the main issues that autistic young people in Scotland are facing, and how do you feel that society needs to change to improve the lives of autistic young people?
I'm very angry about it.
Yeah.
Very angry. I hoped that sort of 15 years on from my first child being diagnosed, that things would have improved massively. I really
Hmm.
hope that. But there so there has to be understanding, first of all, among educators as to what autism is. Because when you're a parent, you are gaslit when you first have concerns, and you'll maybe say to a teacher or someone at nursery, I'm concerned about maybe this, they're showing a bit of that, and you will be told that's a load of nonsense. Don't be ridiculous. They don't have autism or but these people don't know what autism is. They don't. And I was told something recently that I was at recently advocating on that a huge problem is, and in fact I've been told by an expert who's just diagnosed my son, that schools are given a questionnaire to fill in, and they will give a score of what they think the issues are. And
Hmm.
parents will give a score. And parent score is always double what the school's is.
Hmm.
That's because the school doesn't know what they're looking for. But that might be your first gateway in to CAMS to get help for your child. Because the longer you leave it, the more of a mental impact it has on your child. Struggling at school and struggling socially and being bullied. A lot of autistic children are bullied, we know that. So that needs to change. Educators need to be educated. I'm furious about the size of schools and the design of schools. Schools are becoming bigger and bigger, and they are all lit by bright white lighting. They all have hard surfaces. You move a chair out, it scrapes on the concrete ground. Everything about that appalls me. And my youngest is in a very small rural school. There's only 7 kids in his class.
Hmm.
We've tried him in 2 other schools. We eventually had to remove him from school for 6 months. Then he thrives. He thrived in this rural school. Incredible. So you need the right environment for kids. You need the right training for educators. You need access to diagnosis or mental health support.
Mhm.
All of these, the mental health support, the access to diagnosis now is completely cut off.
Yeah.
Um, I know that CAMS in my area is not taking any more children at all.
Mhm.
They've stopped diagnosing ADHD apparently, but they're not taking anyone just now unless they have attempted or are seriously talking about committing suicide.
Mhm.
And it shouldn't be like that. Wouldn't cost society much to make life easier for autistic children. In fact, all children would thrive in environments that would suit autistic children.
Yeah.
And then you're actually cutting the costs because the mental health damage that is being caused to these young people somewhere further up, that has to be dealt with, and that costs money. So we really need to look at that and not just forcing the same model on autistic children and young people that hasn't worked for decades.
Mhm.
Why do it?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think the school system is the main thing that I'm passionate about trying to, change and trying to campaign to get change for that because it's so important. Did you mask when you were younger? And have you found that you've been able to unmask since discovering that you're autistic?
I mask all the time.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's when I'm not masking, I am silent.
Mhm.
So that's really the way I am. I don't
Yeah.
talk in the house during the day. Um, I tend to message my husband a lot and my children. That's our favorite form of communication.
Yeah, I do that as
Um,
well.
do you? Yeah,
Yes.
we can have conversations, great conversations about ideas. Oh, amazing. We can go, like go info dump. Oh,
Yeah.
info dump here. We can do that. But to actually talk about things that are difficult or to just talk sometimes
Mhm.
is just too much.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you'll notice I'm a wee bit husky at the moment, but that's because if I don't talk for a long time, I then strain my vocal cords.
Mhm.
So I saw a friend yesterday that I've not seen for a while, and we were talking for ages because we're both autistic.
Yes.
All my friends are autistic at this age,
Mhm.
and we never even knew.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's bizarre. So that's another thing to look forward to as you get older, is that somehow you naturally gravitate towards people who are autistic
Mm.
because it becomes so much easier just to be uh, yourself.
Yeah.
It does become easier. But yes, masking. I mask all the time, and I'm really a person who enters the room and kind of goes ta-da, and that's not me at all.
No.
You know, I'm the shyest person in the universe, but I can't stand the feeling I get off of other people feeling uneasy.
Mhm.
So I can't cope with that in a room, and I have to somehow set everyone at ease
Yeah.
and get everyone talking to each other, use all the skills my gran taught me.
Mhm.
And a really important part of masking when I was younger was I started wearing makeup at a very early age, and I was a goth.
Oh.
I still am a goth. I'm not wearing black today. I would change just for today, but I was a goth, and um, it was a case of if you're going to marginalize me for what I saw as no reason, then I'll give you a reason,
Mm.
and so I did. Uh, And interesting was always being asked if I was a witch. But then I started, after the goth, I started to just wear makeup. I was sunbed tans all the time. And I would get up in the morning and I would spend hours on my hair, hours on my makeup, just to make it look like I didn't have makeup on, but that it looked healthy. But I had lots of makeup on. And I wouldn't be able to open my front door then without makeup on. There's no way I would be able to go out the house without makeup on. So it meant that on days where I was really exhausted, with the EDS and everything like that, I couldn't go out of the house even to go to the bin because I
Yeah.
hadn't been able to do my hair and my makeup. And that was the mask that I physically wore in the outside world.
Hmm.
And whenever I didn't wear it, people would automatically say, "Oh, you're not feeling well, Judith."
Yeah.
So I had to get therapy so I'm wearing makeup today because I'm doing this, so I need the mask.
Mm.
I had to get therapy to gradually get me to reduce the amount. And now at the age of 54, I can not wear makeup and I can go out of the house. I'll not be
Mm.
happy about it, but I'll be able to do it if I have to.
If you could give your younger self some advice, what would it be?
You have a value simply by being in the world, just by being born. If you think of how your family felt the minute you arrived in this world, and the joy they felt at you being here, and the thought of you being taken from them by illness or any other reason when you were that tiny newborn, and how that would have torn them apart, and all the hopes and dreams that they had for you and then society had for you. Try to hold on to the fact that at the minute of your birth, you were the most important thing in the universe to someone. And just by entering the world, you have that incredible value. And although you might not feel it because of things going on around you, things that you can't control, it's still there. You're still that little person. So that's one part of the advice I would give. And the other part is find out what you love doing. Find out what interests you, what you love doing. What I would say as an autistic person is what you freewheel at. I imagine myself when I'm researching, I am like a trapeze artist and I am flying through the night sky and I grab I can I can reach a star on a constellation and then I can see how that's going to lead to another star and then you will get, Orion's belt or something like that. That's what it's like when I'm researching. And I feel free and not worried about anything. But also because it's hyper focus, you've got to remember to eat and drink. So I would say find out what gives you that feeling, and as long as it's not dangerous or causing a danger to you or someone else, follow that, because that's where your path in life will lead. That's where you are meant to be. So don't push at an open door. Go with that because that can lead to a career or that can lead to so many things. Just meeting people that think the same way or have the same interests as you. So I would do that.
Yeah, that's
Do
great
that.
advice. Very moving.
Oh, is
Very,
it okay?
yeah, it really was. I mean, the whole thing you were saying about your value just being born and stuff, it was very emotional, very nice.
That's something I learned recently. Just
Mm.
it's yeah. It was through it is my original thought, but it was through a, a meditation that I did.
Mm. It's lovely advice, really.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. You were involved in the Witches of Scotland campaign. Do you think that being autistic played a part in motivating you to get involved with the campaign?
Oh God, yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Because I had been reading and researching about this for years and thought nobody else was interested at all. And I thought, how can it just be me that's so incensed by what happened to these people? And so when the Witches of Scotland people started up, and then they got in touch with me, I was just so, can you say delighted? Is that the wrong thing to say about a campaign like this? I was just so happy that someone, especially Claire Mitchell, who's a QC or a KC now, someone could tell people that legally this was a miscarriage of justice.
Yeah.
It's a simple miscarriage of justice. You can't legally throw some oats over your cow and make that cow fly you all the way to another village. You can't do that. Even if you think you can do that, you can't. So that means that the crime you've been committed of doing, it couldn't have existed. So when they got, and they were so fired up, and then we all geeked out about it, and then there's a whole community of us now, historians and activists and things from Witches of Scotland, playwrights, etc., that will get together every now and again and just geek out. Usually in Edinburgh, that's amazing fun. So yeah, I was huge. I was just so delighted to get involved with that campaign because it demonstrated how we should not marginalize people within our society, because this is where it leads.
Yeah.
So that'd be the short answer to that.
That makes sense. Yeah. Speaking of the witch hunts, have you read A Kind of Spark by Elle McNichol or watched the TV programme? When I read it and watched the show, it really reminded me of you. And it shows a connection between people who are accused of being witches and autistic women. So what did you think of the book, if you have read it?
Man. Now, I read it because I've had it for ages.
Yes.
So many people told me, get this book because that's you, right?
Yes.
And it was actually at one of our talks. It was the English teacher from Forth Academy said, have you read it? We're doing it now with the kids. I mean, you two over there, that's you. So when you talked to me about it, I thought, right, I'll read it. Luckily, I'm hyperlexic, so it took me about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But I just from so many angles, this book is me. It's like somebody took my life and wrote about it. Just incredible book. It's an incredible book. It starts off, almost quite nicely. You're just learning about a little girl in a primary school, and it seems, fairly not very hard hitting. But as it progresses, the way it illustrates how someone who's autistic can be made to feel and how they might react in certain situations, but how other people feel, and not just children, which is important. It's the adults. And her teacher reminded me of one of my primary school teachers who put me behind a blackboard. That was the punishment. I never ever broke rules in school. I followed rules rigidly at school, and I was always an A student until I was moved to another secondary school, and that's another story. But through primary, through second, the early parts of secondary, I loved learning so much. I felt so safe in the classroom environment. But this one teacher in primary one put me behind the blackboard for some rule break that to this day I don't even know what it was meant to be. I think I'd maybe been talking to the person next to me. And still to this day, that memory stings me. The injustice of it. So seeing the way she was treated by her teacher, but also the beautiful relationship she has with her big sister, and her big sister going through burnout. And I've experienced serious burnout twice in my life. And so, yeah, I could really relate to that.
Yeah.
So there's that side of it, and then there's the whole witch trial side of it. And the way she explains to her community the reasons why it's still relevant and it needs to be addressed and there should be a memorial. Well, that's what I did in this town with my research partner.
Yeah.
Explained almost exactly the same thing. We're autistic, so that's how we got involved in this subject. But actually, when you dig a bit deeper, it's all about society, and it still reflects society today. So yeah, that's all in there. Um, oh, an incredible group, and she says something in it about having fizzy palms.
Hmm.
Feeling a fizz in our palms, and I was blown away when I read that because I've never heard anybody even talk about that or describe it as that before. But when I feel an injustice or a hurt at something, it's my palms. They feel fizzy and right up to my fingers. It's a burning, like, fizzy feeling. And so when I
Wow.
read that, I couldn't believe it. I turned the page over at the corner. Sorry to people who don't like doing that. I was blown away.
Mhm.
So the book is incredible. Um,
Yes.
I can't praise it too highly.
Mhm.
The story is fantastic,
Yeah.
and it really echoes what happened in my community. And then, we got the community on side, and when they were on side, they were really on side. And we now have a plaque mounted on the wall of what would have been where our old toll booth was. It's the town buildings now, the old townhouse. Uh, we used so two local benefactors gave us the money. Although we were going to raise the money, they gave us the money just like that.
Mm.
We used local artists who used the story and worked with us on a design and have put this amazing design on it. And it was the book. The book is where does the book finish and I start?
Yes.
So it's incredible.
Yes, definitely. I'm so glad that you've finally read it and enjoyed it.
I really did, really
Yeah.
did.
Do you have any advice for other people who have been late diagnosed?
Don't be put off by people who will really dismiss you when you tell them of your diagnosis. And it will be people who surprise you. It will be really good friends.
Mm.
People will turn around and say to you, "Oh yeah, but we're all a little bit autistic,"
Yeah.
which can really hurt. And then you have to go back and explain to them, "No, we're not. It's called the autism spectrum.
Mhm.
If you don't display enough of these characteristics or have difficulties with enough of these things, you're not on it.
Mhm.
We're not all. But what we all are is we're all human. So you might not share my autistic traits, but I share some of your human traits.
Yeah.
That's where the commonality is."
Mhm.
So you get that, and you get well, it's never caused you any problems up till now,
Mm.
but these people don't realize that they know nothing about your life.
Yes.
Or autism doesn't define you. I was told that by another friend. And autism absolutely does define me. And
Mhm.
if that offends you, I'm not even sorry. I can't separate myself from the autism. So I'm autistic and it's not a disease. And actually, do you know what? Although society makes my life difficult, because of the way things are built or the way things operate or lack of services, autism doesn't make my life difficult.
Mhm.
I wouldn't change being autistic. So you will hear all of these things.
Yeah.
Um, don't feel under pressure to read everything about autism. I started doing that and gave up very quickly because I just couldn't, because it upset me.
Hmm.
Because when I started to read things about autism, it was like, why did nobody notice this when I was younger? Okay, there might not been services or whatever, but if people around me had noticed when I was younger, I wouldn't have been pushed to do things that have caused me mental anguish to the point where I can still remember these things. I can still remember the conversations or what I was wearing the day that happened or, things like that. Or even pushed me to wear clothes that I couldn't stand wearing, that physically I couldn't
Mhm.
stand wearing. So sit with yourself for a while, like quite a while, and have a think about yourself. And at some point, you're going to come to the impression that, like I did immediately, there's nothing wrong with me. And actually, I quite like myself. So
Mhm.
if nobody can accept, even if good friends can't accept that I'm autistic and that I might become vocal about it, then that's okay. Maybe I'll find other friends.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. What are your goals for the future?
To finish this book that I'm writing about the Forfar witch hunts, that's my immediate goal.
Cool.
Um, Family stuff has got in the way for the last year or so.
Mm.
My mum's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and so, but that's my absolute priority now is to finish the book because my
Mhm.
research partner and I are going on to write another book after that. We've already
Cool.
planned it. We've already got the chapters worked out,
Mm.
and we've already done some research for that. So, really, to do that and to continue on with campaigning
Yeah.
as much as I can. Along with the other group of us, there's a group of us that you know of that are involved in things for the National Autistic Society,
Mhm.
and even just within my community, if anyone wants to talk about it,
Yeah.
to really keep the foot on the pedal to campaign about better services for our children.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
That's great.
they're my immediate plans.
Yeah, good luck with the book. I hope I can read it sometime and you're able to get it published.
Oh, it will be published, yes, and you
Yeah,
can read it. Yes.
great. What is something that people would be surprised to know about you?
I'm covered in tattoos.
Wow.
So I have lots of tattoos.
Mm.
And they're on my hands. And this one is me. It's upside down, but this is me trapezing. This is my inner self.
Oh, wow, that's
So
amazing.
she's got a book in her hand. I love Alphonse Mucha, so that's some of his stuff. But she's not finished. This is all going to go all over the
That's
airwaves.
really cool.
And the reason I have lots of tattoos is because I've grown up with body dysmorphia.
Mm.
So I've grown up hating my body. I was anorexic when I was younger, and that's another kind of classic autistic teenager thing. So I decided to, to stop myself looking at my body and seeing the faults. I can look at my hands and go, "Oh, I love those tattoos."
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, so I'm covered in tattoos.
that's really cool. Final question is, what does being autistic mean to you?
It means that I am very privileged to have a brain that works the way mine does because I can see things that neurotypical people can't see. Um, I can I can see everything all at once when I
Yeah.
look. Now, sometimes that can be a curse, but sometimes it's an absolute blessing because I can spot that red squirrel over there, and you haven't even seen the tree yet.
Mhm.
It's I don't mean you, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, I can see shapes and patterns in things that other people can't see. I can research, so I can will have a hunch about something. I will be able to find the thing, even if it takes me weeks, and I will find the thing that I had the hunch about, and then I can then immediately think to myself, right, there's going to be a link that goes off here, and off I go, and I find all these connections
Yeah.
that other people can't. So I'm not saying it's a superpower because it's not, but it is a special ability a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I, with my children, we were always able to communicate non-verbally.
Hmm.
Just we would make squeaks like you just made, that sort of noise,
Yeah.
but we would have them. We had squeaks so that we could communicate what it was we needed or what we were feeling, because we'd be too exhausted to maybe say
Yeah,
or get up or yeah. So there's all
that's
sorts
really
of
cool.
yeah, and but I've also met amazing people through being autistic. Um, like I say, now all my best friends, they were my best friends before, but it turns out we're all autistic, and we'd never really known that. Um, and so our children are all friends,
Mhm.
and so it's you can find a community of people. You will.
Yeah,
I'm a testament to that.
that's lovely. Thank you for sharing, and thank you so much for coming on today. It's been great to
Thank
talk to
you.
you.
Thank you very much.